I found my wife's secret bank account with $250, $0, and then discovered she's been secretly signing property over to her brother while claiming we're building a future. Now she's suing me for financial betrayal. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here we are. The craziest thing happened to me, and I need to get it off my chest. It all started with a gut feeling, Something wasn't sitting right. My wife, Lisa, had always been a little bitchy when things didn't go her way, but lately she'd been acting even more off. She'd come home late from work meetings, sometimes smelling like she'd been somewhere else entirely. I brushed it off at first. She's a woman who likes her independence, I told myself. But then I started noticing little things that didn't add up. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I decided to do some digging. I'd been noticing strange charges on our joint bank account, things that didn't make sense, trips she didn't tell me about, and a few odd withdrawals. I always trusted her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I sat down at my laptop during lunch and pulled up our bank statements. That's when I saw it, an account I'd never known about with a balance of $250, $0. I almost dropped my phone. How the hell did she have that much money just tucked away? I checked the account details and it was in her name, but the account was linked to her personal email, which she'd never mentioned having. I immediately felt my stomach tighten. I'd always thought we were building a future together, saving for a house, maybe a nice vacation someday. But this was something else entirely. I felt sick. I went through more statements, more strange transactions, some large deposits that didn't match her salary, and then I saw something that made my blood run cold. She'd been signing property over to her brother, Mark, while telling me she was building a future with me. I couldn't believe it. She'd been secretly transferring assets, probably to hide money or prepare for some kind of escape. The worst part, I found a series of emails on her phone, hidden in a folder she thought I wouldn't find. She'd been lying outright, talking about her plans to sign over a house to Mark, explaining how she'd keep me in the dark so I wouldn't interfere. She even said, "We're building something for our family," but it was all a lie. She was using me, using our marriage to cover her tracks. I felt numb, furious, betrayed. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I had to gather my thoughts first. This wasn't just about money, this was about trust, about the fact that she'd been lying to my face for months. I kept staring at the screen, trying to process everything. I felt like I didn't even know who she was anymore. Lisa, my wife, the woman I loved, she had been sneaking around, cheating, and secretly screwing over our future. And the worst part, she kept telling me she was doing everything for us, that she loved me, that she wanted a secure future. It was all a lie. I realized I was in deep enough to see that this wasn't just a moment of anger or betrayal. It was a total demolition of everything I thought I knew about her, about us. I didn't sleep that night, just lying there, replaying the moments when she looked me in the eye and lied about where she was or what she was doing. I knew I had to confront her. I just didn't know how or when. But one thing was clear, my world was about to change forever. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind kept circling back to everything I'd discovered the night before. That secret account, the property transfers, her lies. It was like finding out my entire life had been built on a lie, and I was suddenly face to face with a stranger. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just storm into the house and accuse her without evidence. I had to be smart about this. I spent the day gathering everything I could, screenshots of the bank account, copies of the emails she'd hidden, bank statements, and the property transfer documents. I even called my lawyer just to get some advice on how to approach this legally. I wasn't planning on just yelling at her and storming out. I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with, what my rights were, and what my options looked like. That evening I came home early, trying to catch her off guard. I wanted to see her reaction when she realized I knew everything. As soon as I stepped inside, the house was eerily quiet. No sign of her. I checked the living room, the kitchen, nothing. That's when I found her. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking at something that made her smile in that bitchy, manipulative way she always did when she thought she was in control. I took a deep breath and sat down across from her. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up at me, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "Oh, about what?" she asked, feigning innocence. I pulled out the evidence I'd collected, screenshots, bank statements, the property deeds, and laid them on the table. Her face froze for a moment, then she started to lie. "That's all just a misunderstanding," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. "You're reading too much into things. I've been doing everything for us, for our future. That account, it's just savings, the property transfers, just paperwork I was handling, nothing sinister. You're overreacting as usual." She tried to brush it off, but her voice cracked under the weight of her own lies. I wasn't buying it. I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "You've been lying to me for months," I said. "You've been secretly transferring assets to your brother, hiding money and claiming we're building a life. But all I see is betrayal. How could you do this? How could you lie to my face and cheat on me behind my back?" My voice cracked a little, but I couldn't hold back. I was furious. She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she snapped. "You're just jealous or paranoid. I've been working hard to secure our future, and you're just jealous because I don't tell you everything. That's what marriage is, right? Trusting each other blindly." Her tone was dismissive, but I could see the guilt lurking behind her eyes. She knew she'd been caught and she didn't like it. I felt my blood boiling. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I told her I'd had enough, that I was done with her lies and that I wanted her out of my house. She started to cry, fake tears rolling down her cheeks, but I saw right through that act. This wasn't about crying, it was about manipulation. I told her I was going to get a lawyer, that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She looked at me, her face twisting into a sneer. "You're just mad because you're not smart enough to see how much I've done for us," she spat. "You're a fool if you think I've been unfaithful, but I'll prove to you I've done nothing wrong." That was the moment I realized how deep her lies ran. She had her stories ready, her spin. I knew I couldn't trust a word she said anymore. The betrayal cut deep. But what hurt even more was the realization that I had married someone who was capable of lying, cheating, and manipulating me for her own benefit. I left her sitting there, fuming and pretending innocence, while I went to start planning my next move. I knew I couldn't just walk away, not without fighting back. The fight was just beginning. The next few days were a blur of anger, confusion, and planning. I couldn't sleep much, replaying every moment, every conversation, every sign I missed. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been sneaking around, lying about her whereabouts, and secretly transferring assets to her brother while insisting everything was for our future. I had to do something, but I also knew I couldn't just act impulsively. I needed a solid plan. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer trying to understand what my rights were and what steps I could take. Turns out, she'd done some pretty serious financial moves that could give me leverage, if I played it right. I also started digging into her bank accounts more, trying to find if there was anything else hidden, any other accounts or shady transactions. I wanted to be thorough. It was a sickening feeling, knowing she'd been lying for so long. But I refused to be blindsided again. One night, I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with more evidence and a clear plan. I arranged to meet her at a neutral place, just a coffee shop nearby. I figured if she was going to lie her way out of this again, I'd be ready. When she arrived, she looked tense, like she knew I was onto her but still pretending everything was fine. I pulled out the documents I'd collected, emails, bank statements, the property transfer papers, and laid them on the table. She immediately started to spin her usual stories. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said, her voice trying to sound innocent. "You're overreacting like always. I've done nothing wrong. Those accounts, they're just savings for emergencies for us." She looked at me with that fake smile, trying to manipulate the situation, but I was past falling for her lies. I told her I knew about her secret account, about the property transfers, and that I had enough evidence to take this to court if necessary. Her eyes widened just a little, but her tone stayed dismissive. "You're just jealous," she said. "Jealous because I've been working hard for us. You're paranoid. You think I'm cheating, but I'm not, I swear. You're just insecure. That was her go-to excuse, blame me for being insecure, accuse me of mistrust. But I saw through it. I knew she'd been cheating, lying, and stealing from us. I told her I was done listening to her lies, that I was filing for divorce and taking everything I could prove. She got angry then, her bitchy attitude coming out full force. You're a fool if you think you can take everything, she spat. I've been doing what's best for us. You're just too stupid to see it. I'll make sure you regret this. Her words didn't scare me, but they confirmed one thing. She was dangerous, manipulative, and willing to do whatever it took to keep her secrets hidden. That night, I went home and started making calls to my lawyer, to financial advisors, and to get everything in order. I also reached out to a private investigator I'd found online, someone who could help me gather more concrete evidence, especially about her affair. I needed proof of her cheating, her secret meetings, the whole mess. I knew. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about her betrayal on every level. She lied about everything, about us, about her fidelity, about her intentions. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had proof and a plan. Dread because I knew this was only the beginning of a long, ugly fight. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also couldn't let her keep lying and stealing from me. I had to protect myself, my future, and whatever was left of my dignity. I was ready for whatever was coming next, even if it meant tearing her world apart. This wasn't just about money or infidelity. It was about trust, respect, and whether I could ever forgive someone who'd betrayed me so completely. Over the next week, everything moved faster than I expected. I kept my cool on the surface, but inside I was a mess, angry, betrayed, and feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. I had my lawyer draw up the paperwork for divorce, and I hired the private investigator to dig deeper into her affairs. I needed hard proof of her cheating, her secret meetings, anything that could stand up. In court, I also started documenting everything, screenshots of bank statements, emails, texts, even her recent phone calls. I knew if this was going to go to court, I had to be meticulous. One afternoon, I decided I needed to see her face to face one last time before everything hit the fan. I told her I wanted to talk, no accusations, just a calm conversation. She agreed, probably thinking she could spin her way out of it again. I met her at a local cafe, and as soon as she sat down, I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. She looked nervous, but her bitchy attitude was still there, trying to act like she was the victim. I started by laying out everything I'd found, about the secret account, the property transfers, the emails, the evidence of her affair. I didn't hold back. I told her I knew she'd been lying for months, that I had proof she was cheating on me with some guy she met at her networking events, and that she'd been secretly signing property over to her brother while claiming we were building a future. Her face went pale, and for a second she looked genuinely caught off guard, but then she recovered, her tone turning defensive. You don't understand, she snapped, her voice rising. All of that is just business, it's nothing. You're just jealous because I've been doing everything for us. You're insecure and you're paranoid. I swear I've been faithful. This is just your insecurities talking. She tried to dismiss everything, but I wasn't having it. I told her I was done listening to her lies. I said I was filing for divorce and that I was going to take everything I could prove, her assets, her lies, her betrayal. She scoffed and rolled her eyes. You're just mad because I won't be your little puppet anymore, she sneered. You think you can control me, please. I've been doing what I want and I'll keep doing it. You're nothing but a fool if you think you're taking me down. Her words stung, but I knew better. I knew she was just trying to manipulate me again, trying to turn things around so I'd back off. But I wasn't going to let her. That night, I sat down with my lawyer and started compiling all the evidence into a legal package. I also contacted the private investigator who confirmed she'd been meeting up with her lover at some fancy hotel downtown. I had photos, texts, and even a witness statement. I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, I had proof. But the anger still simmered underneath. How could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, and steal from me for so long? I knew I had to prepare for a fight. I wasn't about to let her walk away scot-free, especially after everything she'd done. The money, the property, the lies, it all pointed to a woman who was willing to burn her entire life down just to keep her secrets. I was exhausted, drained, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about fighting for my money or my house. It was about reclaiming what was left of my dignity. I'd been played for a fool, but I was done being the victim. Now, I was ready to stand up and fight back, even if it meant tearing her world apart in the process. The day I filed the divorce papers, it felt like a weight lifted, but also like I was stepping into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I knew this was going to get ugly fast. She had always been manipulative, but now she was cornered and I could see her losing control. I also made sure to get a court order to freeze her assets, especially that secret account and the property transfers she'd made to her brother. I wanted everything documented and legally secured before she could do anything crazy. She found out I'd gone to the lawyer that same day. Her reaction was classic anger, denial, then outright rage. She called me a betrayer, accused me of ruining her life, and said I was just jealous because she was better than me. She tried to turn it around, saying I was the one cheating, that I'd been unfaithful and that I'd been hiding my own secrets. I just listened, knowing she was grasping at straws. I didn't bother arguing. I knew she was trying to manipulate the situation, but I had all the evidence now. Over the next few days, she started to get more aggressive. She'd show up at the house unannounced, claiming she wanted to talk things out, but I knew better. I kept my distance, let my lawyer handle all official communication. Meanwhile, I was preparing for the worst. She might try to hide or move money, or worse, try to turn the courts against me. I had to stay one step ahead. I hired a financial expert to go through her accounts and a private investigator to keep tabs on her movements. I wasn't going down without a fight. One night she called me, her voice trembling. She tried to plea bargain, saying she'd come clean if I just dropped everything. That was a lie. I told her I wasn't interested in her apologies or her fake tears. I'd heard enough. I told her I was done, that I was going to take everything she'd stolen, everything she'd lied about, and make sure she paid for it. She yelled, called me a heartless bastard, and hung up. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. I was finally taking control, but I knew this was just the beginning of a long, nasty battle. The court date was set for a few weeks later. I prepared myself mentally for every possibility. Her trying to lie her way out, trying to manipulate the judge, or, even worse, trying to run off with whatever money she could hide. I made sure my evidence was airtight and I had witnesses ready. I was determined to get justice, not just for me, but for what she'd stolen from us both: trust, respect, and a future I thought we were building together. Looking back, I realize how naive I was to trust her so blindly. But I also learned that sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people closest to us. I don't know what the future holds now, but I do know one thing. I refuse to be the fool anymore. I'll fight for what's mine and I'll rebuild from this mess. I just hope anyone else out there who's going through something similar learns to trust their instincts. Because once the lies come out, there's no going back. The court date finally arrived, and I'll admit, I was a nervous wreck. Not because I doubted my case, but because I knew how manipulative she was capable of being. Lisa showed up looking polished, her face carefully blank, trying to project innocence even though I knew better. I sat there across from her, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through: her lies, her betrayal, the stolen money, the property she'd signed over to her brother. I had my evidence laid out, ready to present, and I was determined to come out of this with some semblance of justice. The judge listened carefully as I laid out the entire story: how she'd secretly opened an account, transferred assets, lied about her whereabouts, and cheated on me with her lover. I showed the email exchanges, the bank statements, the property deeds, and the witness statements from the investigator. She tried to deny everything at first, throwing out wild accusations about my fidelity, about how I'd been abusive or controlling. But I stayed calm, citing concrete proof. When the judge looked at the evidence, her defenses crumbled. In the end, the court ordered her to return the assets she'd transferred illegally, to pay back the money she'd hidden, and to cease any further transfers of property. They also granted me full custody of our shared assets and ordered her to stay away from certain accounts. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about accountability. I felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control of what was left of my life. As she left the courtroom, she shot me a venomous look, but I didn't care. I knew I'd won the legal battle, but the emotional scars would take longer to heal. I also knew I'd have to rebuild everything: my trust, my sense of security, my future. But I was done being the victim. I'd learned a harsh lesson about trust, about betrayal, and about how far some people are willing to go for their own selfish gain. In the aftermath, I focused on healing myself. I cut ties with her completely, changed all my passwords, and started seeing a therapist. I needed to process everything that had happened and rebuild my confidence. I realized how important it is to listen to your instincts, to trust yourself, and to never ignore the warning signs. I also learned that no matter how much you love someone, you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be honest. Looking back, I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret fighting for what was rightfully mine. I've come out of this stronger, more cautious, and more aware of the kinds of lies people are capable of telling. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something similar, trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for your life. Because in the end, you're the only one who can truly protect what's yours.